That's one of my favorite things to do as an admin, right? Is just kind of
Go
take a look
rogue.
at, no, not go rogue, but see if anyone's joined.
Hey, and welcome to DevOps Roundup. Today we're going to kind of dive a little deeper into Git repositories and how much they're going to cost you.
Yeah, so we're going to take a look at not only the top 3 contenders in the space, which is going to be GitHub, GitLab, and Bitbucket, but we're also going to look at 3 other honorable mentions just to kind of give you the full gamut of what's available out there. Also, Sean, we have recently hit our goal, if not surpassed our goal by
Oh
100
yeah,
subscribers. So we're well on our way to 250.
yeah, definitely. I was surprised that not only did we reach 100, that we blew way past it, and we're almost almost the 200 mark as of the recording of this episode.
Yeah. So if you're watching this and you haven't hit subscribe, we're trying to hit 250. So make sure you hit that subscribe button now to help us get to our goal. All right, Sean. So let's jump into it. Let's talk about pricing, right? One of the things that I wanted to cover is when you're thinking of getting a Git repository, there's quite a few available out there, and they all basically, and I'll put this in big air quotes,
Uh-huh.
basically do the same thing, but there's some nuances between them all. And I've used a couple. I'm sure you've used a couple, and I
Mhm.
figured we'd use this time to kind of talk about our opinions, some pros and some cons for each one, take a look at what's available at the different pricing tiers that are publicly available, and then kind of just give you information to help you figure out which tool or which repository is right for you and your team.
Yeah. And a quick disclaimer before we jump into this. Um, I partner with all 3 major commercial Git repository vendors that we're going to be talking about: Atlassian, GitLab, and GitHub. And for the most part, I'm agnostic, and I definitely will point out what I think are the benefits of each one, but I won't drill down into what I
Right.
think might be the negatives. I'll let Alex be
But
the
but I think it's important to note, right? Because I've had to do this activity myself. I've been responsible for, hey, we need a Git repository system. Which one should we use?
Mhm.
And part of my job has been, what did they cost? Because that's a big factor, right? And so we'll look at the features and we're going to try to keep it objective to what's on the screen, right? And then tell you, hey, this one's going to give you this amount of stuff. This one's going to give you this other amount of stuff, right? So we're not, we'll give you our opinions as appropriate, but I'm going to try to keep it as objective as possible as well, because when you're doing your review, you're probably going to want to be objective as well.
Yeah, and what we might think is more important for sites that we've implemented things for may not be what's important to your organization.
Yeah, like back in the day, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, private and public repos was a big differentiating factor, right?
It
The
was. Yeah.
free stuff was all public. The the
Is
paid stuff
15
was
years the
private.
new back in the day?
I think it is.
All right, we'll go with that then.
We'll go with that. All right. So in no particular order, I just opened these up in order, in no particular order, but in the order that they're on my
We
screen.
seem to have jumped right to GitHub.
We have jumped right into GitHub only because, okay, so I'll get the subjectivity out of the way. I love their sticker collection. When they show up to conferences, they show up in full steam with stickers, and they
Yeah.
have an amazing sticker collection. So if you care for any stickers of any of these platforms, GitHub right now, hands
Yes.
down, the winner.
Well, and from a partner perspective, GitHub had the best welcome basket of any partnership that I've entered into. Uh, hands down destroys Atlassian. So Atlassian needs to up their game.
When you're becoming a partner, Sean, is there rules like when how for like NCAA when you're getting accepted into college as a tier 1 athlete that you're not allowed to take bribes from the colleges or whatever? Does anything like that apply here?
They most likely is something like that, but no, I don't think so.
So if you want our business, make sure you get sent some good swag bags.
Yes, and any swag bag will give you recognition on the channel and say thank you very much.
Yes.
Um, but
Additionally, not yeah, as we're growing our audience as well, if you are GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket or any of these companies and you want to sponsor the channel, talk to us. We're also open for sponsorship opportunities.
yes, and I'm sure that we'll have links to like buy me coffee type stuff if we don't
Yeah,
already have that. Actually, I know I don't already have one, but I'm sure I'll create one.
we'll get one. Yeah.
But anyway, so a little bit of side story with GitHub, the TV show Silicon Valley. I don't remember what season it is, but I don't remember what season it was. But at one time, Pied Piper was being courted by a lot of companies. GitHub was actually one of them, and the gift basket that shows up on the TV show, in whatever scene where there's a whole room of all these gift baskets,
Yeah.
is the actual gift basket. It's
That they give?
identical to the one that we got when we became GitHub partners, and I just got a kick out of
That's so cool. Yeah. It's so one thing that you need to know about GitHub, right? It's a Microsoft company too, and I think it's important to address that because over my career in IT, some companies either like Microsoft or they don't like Microsoft.
Yeah.
Right. And so
It's either love or hate. Yeah.
yeah. And so I think that's a disclaimer, an important disclaimer to make, right? It's like, what's the relationship that you have with Microsoft as a company? Because this might impact the decision that you go in. I don't personally care. I personally like Microsoft. And so GitHub is also my very first repo that I ever used back in 2011. So yeah, back in the day.
back in your day. Yeah.
Yeah.
So price is usually one of the main considerations when going to a enterprise Git solution. It's not the only one, but it's the one we're talking about today. Typically what will rule out one repository vendor over another is where you are going to be doing your software development. Are you in the cloud or do you have to be on-prem? And once you answer that question, it kind of knocks out some of the contenders, or it makes price even more important as a secondary question on which one you're going to go.
Yeah, that's a very good point because not all the contenders have an on-premise offering.
Or they have an on-premise offering that's too cumbersome.
Right.
And that is something, I don't want to dwell on a negative with GitHub, but it is often seen that the competitors have a better on-prem solution than GitHub does. It has improved over the years, but it's not an incorrect perception.
Right. But I mean, I've always felt that GitHub was like a cloud first.
Yes, that's
cloud native solution first. And so we get a couple of things. So we have 3 different tiers here. We have a free tier, a team tier, and an enterprise tier. And I always just find it so funny how big of a jump we go from the team to the enterprise. But yeah, so keep these numbers in mind because we are going to be comparing these numbers. And the other thing I'm going to say about pricing, right? So if you're a small little startup, Sean calls a startup what, 10 or less people?
Yeah.
If you're a small little startup, right?
2 pizza team.
Yeah, 2 pizza team. The free is always going to be good enough to get you started. And we'll look at the 3 different companies here and kind of go through that. I would say if you're a company, beyond 2 pizzas, but definitely less than I don't know. What would you think is a big company? I think 200 plus is probably.
Yeah. Once you get into the hundreds,
yeah. I would probably call it in the 1 to 200 range. You're probably going to be looking at the team version of this. And anybody over 250, right, over 200 to 250 developers, you're probably going to want to be on the enterprise at that point because you're going to get some benefits from enterprise, such as, well, I don't want to get too far into it, right? But there's going to be a lot of critical items that you get just from an enterprise perspective because you want to protect your data more than the convenience of the code.
Yeah. So the decision on which one to go does weigh heavily on the number of developers in your organization. but then the features are really close behind that. And you may have a team of 50 people, but be enterprise because you needed something in that the feature list that we'll touch on
Right.
in a bit here.
But a great example is like let's assume you have 15 people, and like Skim is not something you're set up yet, right? If you don't even have a Skim for anything else, right? If you're just logging into Jira and Confluence with just username and password, and you don't have Skim set up anywhere, then there's no point in paying extra for functionality you're not going to use either. So you want to be smart about it as well. So what do we get for free, Sean? We get unlimited private and public repositories. And as I mentioned, this is huge, right? Because back in the day,
that's a lot.
yeah, back in the day, it used to be public, right? Especially with the Git on the Git side, it used to be like open source projects.
Yeah, you didn't get
anything.
private with the free version before. You had to be open to anybody.
And in case you're wondering what the difference between public and private repos are, it literally means like who can access your repositories, the internet, the World Wide Web, or are they private to you, right? So then nobody can see them unless you grant access to somebody. And so public repos back in the day used to be a problem because any proprietary intellectual property you put in the
You wouldn't want to
repository,
put it up there.
yeah, which is not something you want to do, would be public. And so private repos were the way to go. But now we get private everywhere. So this is not it's a non the topic of discussion anymore. I just wanted to throw it out that back in the day though it was.
Oh yeah, that used to be the termination if you needed a paid tier or the free tier is your requirement to keep things private. But they've changed that.
Okay. I'm not sure what this is. A dependent bot security and version update. So keeps projects secure by automatically opening up pull requests to update vulnerability dependencies and keep them up to date. Does this replace something like a Veracode type of thing, or is this?
I think it supplements.
Supplements.
Yeah.
Okay. Now this is where we start to get into interesting territory. Your CI/CD minutes per month.
Yeah.
If you're using.
I was going to say, which is a good thing that this is now in the free version. Years past, GitHub Actions wasn't part of the free version.
Yeah. And if it was, what's also nice is the number of minutes, right? So you want to keep an eye on this as we move and progress across these tiers. This is, I think, price is one key factor of, okay, how much are we paying for? What features are we getting? And then the third one, at least within GitHub, is how many build minutes are we going to get? Now, that third element kind of goes out the window if you're going to use a different tool. But if you want to stay vertically stacked within the GitHub tech stack, then 2,000 versus 3,000 versus 50,000 is kind of going to be where you're looking at.
Yeah.
Now, package storage here, this is like JFrog stuff, no?
It is. Yeah. So GitHub has a binary repository that they call packages, and which is pretty much the same thing as the JFrog Artifactory or Sonatype's Nexus.
So I don't do a whole lot of builds, and I don't do a whole lot of packages today. But how many minutes is 2,000? Because I remember back in my days, 2016, 2017, 2018, a typical build would run for 4 to 8 minutes.
Yeah, it depends on the industry and your vertical and what you're creating, but I've seen builds that were 72 hours, and I've seen things that are 10, 15 minutes. So I would say the average is probably closer to the 10, 15 minutes. So let's see what it says.
Let's see. Average build time for CI/CD is less than 3 hours.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's just say, so it's
I was headed towards the 20-minute. It was what I would consider an average these days. But again, it depends on what you're building.
Right. Well, let's just call it 30 minutes. Let's just say a 30-minute build. So we have 2,000 minutes divided by 30. That gives us 66 runs, essentially.
Yeah.
And so
you're running twice a day? Are you running, so if you're only doing a build a day, then that you're covered here. But if you were running a build an hour, you were now exceeding that limit.
Yeah. Now, if you're an open source project, right, where you don't care if your IP is looked at, you do get free build, right? So this is only for private repositories. where you get 66 runs, which I don't feel like it's a lot. Like I feel like if you have a developer team of at least 10 people, let's assume they all build.
Yeah, you're going to hit this limit quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now on the package front, these binaries, I don't feel like they're very big, but I mean, I'm assuming they can be big, but these are usually 2-3 megabytes, no?
Oh, at least, yeah. The binary artifacts are usually multiple megabytes.
Yeah. So again, so you're gonna get quite a bit, and I think 500 megabytes is a decent amount.
So, but depending on how your CI/CD tool or your CI tool is configured, you may be pumping packages into GitHub packages very often. If every build that runs is populating the package repository, you could clearly hit that limit early.
Yeah. And then we get issues and projects, which is basically like having Jira built in.
Yeah, a so very lightweight Jira built
very,
in.
Very lightweight. And then community support. So there's basically a place where you can go ask questions. And there's members of the GitHub community that go and answer questions. Very
not
much
not like GitHub employees, but other fellow
people like
users.
you and me.
Yeah,
like you
exactly.
And me. Yeah, and then you have some featured add-ons. I'm not sure if you're paying extra for these or not, but you apparently get Copilot.
Yeah,
and you get the GitHub Code Spaces, which is an instant dev environment in the cloud. This is nice. So I'd like both of these add-ons that they just come included in that price already. So you get quite a bit for the free. I think, like I said, back in the day, it used to be just literally public repos. And so you get a decent amount. If you're a small company trying to get started, this is going to get you in the right direction, or get you going in the right direction.
Yeah. And if you're an open source project, this is where you should be living.
So Sean, should we stay within the tool, go across, or should we go to see what the competitors have at the free tier as well?
Well, we're about 16 minutes into the recording now. Why don't we stick with this with GitHub, and then we can break out the other two main enterprise tools.
Other videos,
additional videos.
Okay, cool. So we're going to continue down our GitHub pricing exploration here, and we just covered the free tier. Let's move on to the team. And so again, the moment you elapse a few developers, right? The moment you have maybe a dozen or so developers, you're probably going to want to look at the team, simply because you're going to exceed some of the limits of the free tier, right?
Yeah, if your CI process starts getting more complicated, going up the tier levels makes sense.
Yeah. So it's important to note that at the $4 per user per month, which I think is affordable, and we're going to compare that with other tools. So make sure you hit that subscribe button. But you get everything that is covered in the free. So we don't have to repeat that. So we're going to get the deltas here. So we're going to get access to those GitHub code spaces. It looked over here like you get an instant dev one before, but this is I guess you each get one now. I'm trying to figure out what the difference between the GitHub code spaces, where you get an instant dev environment so you can code anywhere, any device, versus you get access to.
I think it's just a repeat of the one, and it's just worded slightly different.
Yeah, it's interesting that they would do it like that. But okay, so but at least they give you the price, right? So basically, if you need a computer, right? So this is, I think, important. Especially again, if you're a new team, maybe
this is a huge feature. And
like if you don't have an IT team and you're not imaging your developer environment and you need resources, this is pretty cheap.
Oh yeah, this is great. Even if you have an IT team that isn't as responsive as you need them to be, and hey, if I need an environment and I didn't know I needed one until just now, I can spin one up here with GitHub, versus even if I have the most responsive IT team, it's probably not going to happen within minutes of me asking them.
Not only that, but the inconsistencies in the onboarding, right? So some teams will, like, as much as you try to document your onboarding process, you're going to forget to install a library. You're going to forget to install a tool. You're going to forget to
install the wrong version of it.
Yeah, and then you got developers on different versions of Visual Studio or something, and this just gives you everything pre-configured, ready to roll. So it saves you some time, especially if you don't have those resources. We got protected branches. This enforces restrictions on how code branches are merged, including requiring reviews by selected collaborators. So this right here is kind of starting to be worth everything, right?
This is basically bringing you into a enterprise software development team.
Yeah, change management, CYAs.
We're not just going to allow any user to willy-nilly merge things, especially if this is you're still working with people outside your company. You can have the protected branches, and like your CM group may only or your CI tool only pulls from the protected branches, and there's rules and peer review to get things into those branches.
And then this next one complements that too. It takes it a little bit step further, where 2 eyes are better than 1, but more than 2 eyes are even better, right? And so you get multiple assignees. This one's interesting to me. Draft pull requests. Easily discuss and collaborate on pull requests before submitting them for formal review, because oftentimes your pull requests get declined. They just weren't ready yet.
Yeah.
And so this, I think, is just optimization and efficiencies. We have code owners automatically request reviews or require approval by selected contributors when changes are made to a section of the code that they own.
Yeah. So this folds in with the whole code review thing where you can set up, default owners for certain sections of code.
Along with this next one too, of required reviewers, right? Ensures that a pull request has a specific number of approving reviews before collaborators can make changes. These
their marketing department is really milking these sets of features here.
But these features are important though, right? Because mistakes will happen. And so many mistakes can be contained by just having this.
Yes.
And so since you don't get any of that in the free version, like this right here is, I think, to me, worth that $4 because it's going to make your team be more efficient. The quality of your software is going to be increased, and you gate behavior behind a paywall, which is interesting, but sometimes necessary. It's got to hurt a little bit, right, for you to use it.
And
Up next week, go ahead.
Yeah, pages and wikis. This is pretty much embedded Confluence inside GitHub.
So we got a light Jira over here, and now we get a light Confluence on the right.
Yes. Yeah.
We get environment deployment branches and secrets. A job cannot access secrets that are defined in an environment unless it's running on that specified branch. So again, a little protection. And then we get an extra 1,000 minutes here.
Yeah. So going back to the environment branches and stuff. Now, you want to go right to the math?
No, go ahead. No, I'll come back.
So I was saying this is similar features to like HashiCorp Vault would give you, or even in Jenkins with how it handles secrets. You can store secrets inside GitHub and refer to them as variables, so they never actually become human readable.
Yeah, I think one thing that I want to call out, right, especially as we get to this third to last one here, web-based support, you got to consider that, it hurts to pay for something, right?
Well, that's not that painful, though. $4.
Yeah, it's not painful, right? But it's still more than zero.
It is.
But time is worth a lot of money. And I think a lot of developers, they don't bother to, they'd rather pay in time than play it cautiously with these like pull request functionalities, right? Especially as well as like support, right? If your developer is Googling how to fix a problem, at the time they're not writing code versus being able to open a support ticket and have a professional help you out. Like you're talking hours versus minutes. It's got a value. It's got time value that I think a lot of people often oversee.
Yeah.
And then we got 2 gigabytes of package storage, so we go up a lot.
Yeah.
And then
now let's go do your math on that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we go up on this one, and then on the 3,000, we basically get 100 runs per month.
Yeah.
If we averaged it out of that 30, so up from the 66, so not that much better. What I'm always curious about is, well, what happens when you run out of the 3,000? And so I'm assuming down below
you get charged more. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that is the, oh, sorry, no, we got two more. So then we
Yeah,
get
we
two
got the
featured
feature
add-ons.
add-ons. Yeah.
Secret protection.
So this is kind of already hinted at earlier when we were talking about the environment deployment branches and secrets. But it's pretty much if you're familiar with HashiCorp Vault, which is now an IBM company. Basically, this is the same type of functionality. I would say it competes with Vault, but Vault is probably the more enterprise tool to use for secrets. But this is strongly a good enough solution.
So not putting your password in plain text is, oh, no.
Yeah, exactly. Don't write it down and put it underneath your keyboard.
Oh man, I
Or
remember
save
those
it to your
days.
Git repository. Yeah.
I remember those days where you comment in the like the key or something, the password.
Yeah.
All right, and then we have code security, which now this is starting to feel a little bit more like Veracode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you start having some SaaS and DaaS solutions at that level.
Yeah. Now, what I like about GitHub as we go into the final tier is we actually get a price for enterprise, which we may or may not see this in other tools that we compare and look at.
That is true. Very often, these vendors are starting to ask you to call sales when you get to the enterprise level. And
Now,
to me, that means they might be willing to wheel and deal on the price, or they just want a salesperson to be able to talk to you to find out exactly what you need, and if there's any upselling that can happen, the salesperson can talk to you right then.
yeah. And so if you're at the enterprise level, right, where you're like seriously considering it, my professional recommendation is make sure you call them all up, right? Pit them all up against each other so that you get the best bang for your buck. Because if you just call one up and you just take that for value, well, you will never know if that was a value or not.
Mm-hmm.
So call them all up. But we do get a $21 per user price. And so let's see what we get here. So obviously we get everything in the free, we get everything in the team. And now we start getting to some very enterprise friendly functionalities. Things that I don't think we care for so much as developers,
Mm-hmm.
but things that your company probably
Your
does care.
company or organization may be very interested in these features.
Yeah. So first off, we got data residency. Because we're in the cloud and not on an on-premise version, where your data is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
and
so,
depending on your company, more important than not.
yeah. True story. We not Git repository related, but I used to work for a company who used a cloud service provider, and it wasn't a data residency thing, but it was literally just a cloud service provider.
It was
The
a
problem,
vendor issue. Yeah.
yeah. So what ended up happening is, one of the customers was using our technology, and because our technology relied on a specific vendor, they're like, that customer, which happened to be our biggest customer, was like, no, we're not going to put our data onto your tools, which are then put onto that competing competitor
Mm-hmm.
vendor. So they made us move off of one stack and move on to another stack. So again, you might have those problems or something like that. So
Or more likely, you're a government organization or defense organization, and you need to make sure that your data doesn't leave the country boundaries that your organization lives in. So if I'm a U.S. defense integrator, I want to make sure that my data is not being stored in Russia.
Yeah, that's always a good thing. All right. Up next, we get enterprise managed users. This, again, it might be overkill if you don't have systems in place already for this.
Mm-hmm.
But basically, you have a little bit more control over which users make it into your Git environment, right? So you don't have to manually go and provision users, right? You using a combination of both of these, users are automatically added. So again, you save some time, but you do got to have that infrastructure in place. You need to have something like M365, the login stuff.
Sure, Okta.
You gotta Okta, yeah. So you gotta have it, because if you don't have them, then there's no point in paying extra for these features. We get enterprise account centrally managed multiple organizations. So if you're a really big company, it enables you to have collaboration between multiple organizations. So if you're working with other big companies,
Yeah. Or if you just have a lot of departments or a lot of projects that you don't necessarily want them to share
Yeah.
code with, but you want to centrally organize all those.
Or
Uh,
an M&A,
yeah. Or
mergers
yeah,
and
during an
acquisition.
M&A event, either way, if you're acquiring companies or you're selling divisions off, this is important.
Yep. Environment protection rules. When a workflow job references an environment, the job won't start until all the environment protection rules have passed. So this is our first developer-centric bonus that we get.
Yeah, this is mainly in your CD type and pipelines where you want to deploy to an environment, but you have a set of rules that the environment needs to meet before you push code out there,
Yeah,
or you push your product out there.
which is always very important, right? Versioning and things of that nature, super important, especially when something goes south on you. It's easier to track and figure out what happened. We also then get repository rules, which enforces branch and tag restrictions across your organization, ensuring branch and tag protection across your repositories. Evaluate rules to assess impact before enforcement.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised that some of that isn't in the team tier, and I bet you parts of that is. It's just not called out as a marketing feature here.
You also get Autolog API. So as a GitHub Enterprise Cloud Organization administrator, you can now access log events using our GraphQL API and monitor activity in your organization. This is interesting. I've seen Atlassian start to do this with GraphQL. I'm not too well versed with GraphQL, but I'm assuming
It
it just
seems to
helps
be
you.
the future with
Yeah,
everything. Yeah. Everyone's jumping towards it.
yeah.
Um,
SOC 1, SOC 2. So this is all cybersecurity type of things, right? So making sure that your data, because remember, you don't own your data, right? It's somewhere else, but you are still responsible for your data, right? So if you're an enterprise, especially in a regulated industry, and you need to show your internal cyber team, how are your vendors or how are our vendors
mhm.
protecting our data? Well, then you need this SOC 1, SOC 2 type of stuff. And the only way to get them is you pony up.
Yeah, exactly.
We got the FedRAMP. So this is important for, Sean mentioned it
For
earlier,
our
right?
public sector friends that have to be on a government cloud,
Yep.
so FedRAMP is very important. It makes the purchasing go smoother. I'm not going to say purchasing is ever smooth, but it's smoother um, for public sector vertical if your product is FedRAMPed.
Yeah.
And then there's
In public
different.
sector. Yeah. And if you're not in the public sector, then you,
You don't care. Yeah,
you don't
if you're
care.
not in the public sector, you don't have to run on a government cloud. You don't care about FedRAMP.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people that are in that and that do have to worry about it. And there's different tiers, and it
Difference here is at FedRAMP, right?
yeah, at FedRAMP. So and they typically match with what level of security that particular project is at, whether it's secret, top secret, whether which end customer. Is it DoD? Is it one of the other three-letter acronyms?
The
So
TLA.
there's a little too much in there to pull back.
Yeah.
So, but it's
We then,
good that it's on there.
yeah. We then get single sign-on, which is kind of complements the provisioning from
Mhm.
before. We get advanced auditing, so you can review actions performed by members of your org. So if somebody's gonna go rogue on you, you're gonna be able to figure out they're going rogue on you.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite things to do as an admin, right? It's just kind of
Go
take a look
rogue.
at, no, not go rogue, but see if anyone's going rogue.
Okay.
That was interesting. If you didn't, so Apple just had something very similar to this, right? They had an engineer basically download all the repository for Vision OS, and then they went to go work at Snap
Oh, okay.
or
Yeah.
Snapchat.
Yeah.
Yeah, so those kind of things, like you can
Yeah.
you want
That's
to.
not a good thing.
Yeah,
So there, well, we're not talking necessarily security tools today, but when we start talking, there's some that really go out of their way to make sure they in the log files to find unusual activity, and then that gets flagged, and I find it interesting to read through some of those when those tools are active at some of my customer sites to see what it's it's finding that user, Cindy is logging in at 3 o'clock in the morning every day, and what's going on with that.
Oh man, that reminds me when I first learned Wireshark,
Mm,
and that you could like look through each message and see
yeah,
the package, and then see the pictures or images that were part of the. I was like, "Ooh, this is fun. You can get
yeah,
some people into trouble here."
yeah.
All right. Up next, we got GitHub Connect. Shares features and workflows between your GitHub Enterprise and Enterprise Server
Mhm.
and your Enterprise Cloud. And so
Yeah. So the enterprise server is the on-prem version of GitHub. So
that's what I figured. And so Atlassian's doing something very similar to this as well, right? Where data centers basically dead on the Atlassian side, but surprisingly they introduced a way to connect so that
yeah.
their AI can go in and grab data from the server.
Well, this is a more of a GitHub session, but to talk Atlassian, because we keep comparing everything to Atlassian, they are the bigger brother in the three of these
You
tools.
think Atlassian's bigger than GitHub?
Age wise,
Age-wise, yeah.
they are definitely not as bloated. But age-wise, they've been around a bit more, so it makes sense that we keep comparing things to them.
That and I spent my entire life in Atlassian, so
Yeah, you're definitely Atlassian focused. However, you definitely have a cloud bias. I would say that the vast majority of our Atlassian customers are still on data center.
I do have I just have too many scars from being on the server and data center versions of these tools that I just never want to be a sysadmin ever in my life.
Yeah, it's definitely more hands-on, roll up your sleeve type troubleshooting when you're on prem than when you're on cloud, because a lot of that stuff is abstracted from you in the cloud that you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
Um, but
All
but
right.
anyway, this is
We get
GitHub.
yeah, we got 50,000, which equates to
Quite a jump.
1,600.
Yeah.
Yeah. But is it really though? Because at the enterprise, you no longer have a dozen teams. You have 2, 3, 4, 500 developers.
Mhm.
And so if each one's running a 30-minute job,
Yeah, it 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 depends on how you configure this. So if we assume that everyone is always going to do stuff by doing the builds in the cloud, then these numbers matter a lot.
yeah.
If you're not doing your builds in the cloud, if your GitHub Actions is calling out something that's either on your own cloud infrastructure, not using GitHub's cloud, um, uh, or it's coming down to an on-prem service. So if your GitHub action fires something off on your own container in your own environment, these hours don't count against you. They only count against you if you're using the GitHub servers to run your
The
build.
convenience of being in their convenient
Exactly.
environment. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. So again, that's going to be a huge contributing factor, right? Do you already have that infrastructure set up? Because it's not trivial, right? You don't just wake up and have, hey, I have my own servers here with my own deployments and stuff. Like, takes some effort, but you pay for that convenience of not having to
Mhm.
do all that setup.
Yeah.
And then finally, we got 50 gigabytes of package. So at 5 megabytes each, you're gonna have quite a bit. And then finally,
But yeah, go back to your point. When you're at this level, 50 gigabytes is nothing.
yeah.
Um,
And then finally, we get premium support with 30-minute SLA on urgent tickets and a 24/7 web and phone support. And I love how you don't get to determine what urgent means.
well, I think that's a pattern we'll find with most of these vendors, that they're defining what urgent means.
Yeah. And I've had Atlassian yell at me because I put something as urgent, and they're like, "This isn't urgent." I'm like, "Well, it's urgent to me."
Yeah, I think we've all been in that. So interesting that they kind of left out some features that I would have put into the enterprise that I know are in the enterprise, but they're not necessarily calling them out.
Like
Um,
LFS.
yeah, well, yeah. Now they're saying that these are additional add-ons, and so the other one, so code spaces was one, but we did talk about code spaces
You
a
would think
little
you'd
bit.
get more though.
Yeah,
I feel like you would get more.
yeah. So that must be additional code spaces that they're doing down here. But the other one that is missing is they have a kind of a Jira Lite in the free tier, But at the enterprise, there's more program management features that you typically would find in Jira available at the enterprise level, and they don't really call that out here.
Yeah, I find this interesting. The AI stuff kind of on the side.
AI is a huge thing, Copilot, developed by the same people at GitHub, not necessarily part of the enterprise. It's definitely a paid add-on.
Right. And so you now have to take that price of $20 for your enterprise and then add an extra $40.
Mm-hmm.
So now you're up to 60. So this is where, again, when you're talking to those sales reps, this is where maybe you can combine a couple of these different pricings, right, for different things that are important for you, right? Because maybe you do care about Git LFS, large file storage, and you fold that price in as well. Assuming they charge you for that.
Yeah, some of these add-ons are free, some of them are not free. I don't know if it doesn't look like they've put them in any particular category or sorted them in any particular way. The other way to buy this, and this will be similar for all the vendors that we talk to, is to talk to a business partner. A number of partners that you can reach out to in your geographical area that can help you purchase this and possibly get discounts.
Yep. All right, and then just to kind of wrap this thing up, if you're
So release team, DevOps tool specialists. We provide professional services and software reselling around the leading software DevOps tools like Atlassian, GitLab, GitHub, JFrog, and others. To talk with us about DevOps, here's our contact information. Please call 866-887-0489 or via email at info@releaseteam.com.
Kind of wrap this thing up. If you're an open source team, so you've heard us mention open source quite a bit here. If you're an open source team, click on the learn more. Most of the time, you'll get a lot of stuff for free, or you get bigger packages for free, right? And so, you don't you get a lot of the free, but then you also get some more stuff sometimes, right? And so check them out.
Or get heavy discounted on the higher tier.
Like Atlassian does like 75% off all the pricing. So check them out. If you're a student and a teacher, right? If you're in college and you're looking at this, the GitHub education, so go check that out because it's important to know. Like you don't want to enter the workforce and be learning what GitHub is for the first time.
Yeah, you definitely should be using this while you're in school.
Yeah, so take advantage that it's free and available for you so you can get your feet wet and that there's resources there. And then we got our 501c, our nonprofits, right? Where depending, you get 25% off. You get either a free GitHub team plan or 25% off the enterprise package there. Yeah. So if you're a nonprofit and you're looking for a source code repository, definitely check those out because Atlassian does offer these as well, but just not free. So anyways, we're going to link the entire compare all features below so you can do your own homework here. But this is one of many tools that you're going to want to compare with. And GitHub, like I said, is just no particular order. It's just the first one that I opened up. But let us know if you like this kind of video because we're going to be dropping more in the future. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit that bell notification as well. And Sean, any closing comments on GitHub pricing?
On GitHub pricing? Yeah, definitely give the partners a chance. Give them a call. I'm not plugging any one particular one, but I have a favorite.
Your favorite? Starts with an R, ends with an E.
I think we'll do GitLab next episode. Because I think Atlassian should go last because it's not their fault that we keep comparing everyone to Atlassian, but we'll try to make comparisons when it makes sense, but not always to Atlassian. But yeah, until next time, thank you for watching DevOps Roundup.
Like and subscribe.